The views and opinions expressed by the host and guests of this show do not represent their employing agency, department, or organization. All information should be regarded as anecdotal, contextual, and educational, and should not be misinterpreted as legal or medical advice. This episode is sponsored by Hero Schedule. If your department needs better scheduling software that isn't outdated, clunky, and expensive, Hero Schedule is an easy switch. It's $4 per user per month, and they give you a free 30-day trial. Get started at heroschedule.com and click on Try Hero Schedule. From interviews to jail calls, Ditto Transcripts delivers fast, confidential, and court-ready transcription for law enforcement agencies. Ditto is CJIS compliant and is already working with agencies all over the U.S., including the Washington State Patrol and the National Park Service Investigations Unit. Get started now at dittotranscripts.com. That's dittotranscripts.com.
But if you're a cop closing the gap, watching this suspect, and they still hit you, there's something wrong with the training. There's something you are not being told.
Welcome to Blue Grit Radio, the podcast that explores making better cops for a better community. I'm your host, Eric Tung. I've been an active police officer since 2007. We will dive into the aspects of police culture, health and wellness, leadership, and mindset. You'll hear from experts not only from policing, but all industries as they relate to being our best with purpose, passion, and positivity. Join me as we share stories, lessons, and advice so we can all be better for ourselves, our teams, our families, and our communities. All right, team, fam, welcome back to another episode. Today I'm joined by the Tony Blauer. So when you hear that name, it's not another person that has the name Tony Blauer, it's the Tony Blauer. So Tony, thanks, man, for coming on the show.
Thank you. That was maybe the coolest intro I've ever had. I was like looking around for like, who is this guy? But yeah, I appreciate that.
Oh, man. And I appreciate so much. And we have to give a shout out to Dennis for connecting us, mutual friend Dennis Pyshak, who's been on the show to talk about his book and the impact of public safety, law enforcement, and resilience, truly. But I will take a moment just to say that I've known your name for a long time. And if people haven't figured out by now, I really go down the rabbit hole and nerd out on a ton of things. And when I came into law enforcement, as much as I like to talk about the illusion of work-life balance and unplugging from the job, and I can say it, but I struggle with it because literally when I'm not at work, I'm working on this thing and podcasting and trying to figure out what we can do for our law enforcement first responder culture. But at the same time, when I was new, I didn't know anything. And so I went to the internet. I went to as many resources as I could find at the time. And a lot of the stuff I could learn about threat assessment, about how to contextualize your environment, man, I started finding all this stuff about you and Spear. And we'll talk about that. But I want to say, like, pushing 20 years ago, I was learning about your name and who you were. So I mean, this is kind of a fanboy moment for me.
I appreciate that. And I make fun of myself a lot, self-deprecating, it keeps you sane.
Yeah, that's good.
I don't, I turned 65 this year and I've been teaching for over 40 years. That might be teaching longer than you've been alive. And
yeah, it has. It is.
And that blows my mind, but I don't remember the time. I do this every day. It's an obsession. I have dreams about it. I wake up. I'm always iterating on drills and concepts. And I'm very hard on my mobile training team. I let them know that like someone in this class is going to need some piece of this puzzle for their next encounter. We don't know who it is, so we can't be asleep at the wheel ever. And so, it's gratifying to hear that. And it reminded me of a story where I moved originally from Canada to Virginia Beach in 2007, and then came out to California in 2010. And we've been teaching Carlsbad PD up the street for a long, long time. And when I moved out here, we were running one of the classes, and it was like, 40 people in the class. And I came by to say hi. And I was doing like a little, talk, doing a slide, kind of waving like the Queen, because my team was training. And so I did a little Q&A, and one of the guys there, Eric, he puts up his hand and he says, like, kind of the same thing as you. He says, "Hey, when I was 16 years old, I saw your videotapes on Panther Productions, and I hadn't even decided to be a cop yet, and it's so cool." But it's it just makes me feel old when you say that. So
Oh,
that's the
well, I
whole point of
hope,
that.
man.
It's,
Well,
yeah.
if I can
Um,
counter it, I don't know. Have you heard this? That more and more people, legitimate folks, are ascribing your 60s to being your most influential decade.
I haven't heard that, but I can attest for me that in terms of uh, breakthroughs for me, just mentally, it's funny when you said influential, I immediately went internal, like self
Mm,
awareness.
mm,
So
yep.
the breakthroughs for me in my 60s, the last 5 years, some of the things I've said, the cliches like, Jesus, why didn't I, man, if I'd known this when I was 20 or 30 or
Of
40.
course.
Yeah, things are different. When I think of the things I'm doing at 60, um, the travel, the talks, the podcast, stuff like that, versus when I was growing up, like a 60-year-old was a really overweight guy in a rocking chair who had just been given a retirement watch from his company. And,
Off to pasture,
you
right?
know, yeah. So yeah, I dig that. I dig that.
Yeah, I feel it. I feel it when I see people that I look up to, and they, for the cops, a lot of people may retire in their mid 50s or early 50s, but then they have so much wisdom and knowledge and experience. And a lot of people stay in the game kind of alongside. They become trainers, they become instructors, what have you, or there are those mentors. And so I feel it. And you mentioned teaching for 40 years, and I'm coming up on 40 later this year. And by no means do I have any of it figured out. And I think if there was a flavor or a weird variety of kind of midlife crisis, I'm like, man, what else is there? And what am I on track? Am I doing the things I need to be doing? And how do I better invest my time and energy? The mentorship piece that, I mean, you've been teaching for 40 years. You've been extremely influential and pioneer in the space, not just for law enforcement, but just self-defense, right? Integrating martial arts with civilians and people, how to be safe in this seemingly more chaotic and dangerous world where people need to have these conversations, right? Like faith groups, organizations, schools, like we need to all know this stuff, just kind of threat assessment and just how do we navigate the world. Um, you are wearing, for those that can't see, like your t-shirt is no fear, like KNOW, to know it. And I know that's a huge factor that we're going to talk about here today, but no, I mean, I think if anything, some people in my peer group get kind of bummed out when they hit 40, but I'm stoked because I can see what a lot of men and women that are ahead of me in life have done and continue to do, especially in the years like 60s and even 70 when you take care of yourself.
It still freaks me out. When I think about my age, I certainly there's a part of it I'm not enjoying, like the athlete in me, the where I just saw my good friend Brian Callen. I don't know if you know Brian, the comedian,
Okay,
but
yeah.
so,
About Brian Callen. Okay, of
yeah,
course you do.
yeah. So he's got this new skit he does where, because he loves martial arts, boxing and stuff, and you know, uh, he's been training for years. And he says, at his age, he says, if something like kicks off, and I'm not going to do, you got to see the skit. He says, like, I can't jump out of the car anymore. I got to warm up. I got to do my ankle circles before I get out of the car. If you're beating up my mother, I'm like, Mom, I'll be there in a second. Hold on. I got to like that whole thing of getting out of bed too fast. Uh, but like for anyone listening, just on that front, and I teach twice a week. That's how I know Dennis. Dennis is, he's been doing for years my online training because a lot of people can't get to whatever thoughts I have that might make you safer. You can't get to it other than through what we're doing now, the internet. So I teach twice a week online, but I tell all of them, it's the one thing I tell them. Everyone listening to the show, everyone training with me, we are aging athletes. And you need to build that concept into your daily habits, your routines of what does it mean to be an aging athlete? How do I keep my posture, my spine, my mind, all of that stuff, my hips, things you don't even think about. Sitting in a car as a cop for hours and hours, it's like like your desk is a car,
Yeah,
right? And then you
yeah.
would get up and go do something. And if you're not working on that stuff, that's going to impact your back and your hips, and you're going to find out about it one day. So there's a lot of stuff you can do listening to, but that's the other problem is there's so much noise on the internet, not
Hmm.
just every, like in
Yeah.
the defensive tactics space, all the way to like every influencer. If I see another 20-year-old influencer talking about longevity, I'm like, dude, you're 20.
Yeah, you're optimized. Look at you.
Do a video when you're 100 and tell me about like longevity. So it's we live in weird times as far as signal to noise ratio and information overload.
Yeah. No, you said a lot there. I guess just to kind of expand on that a little bit, the noise, right? And so, just like the access to information is a double-edged sword. I talked about how I was trying to find all these resources. Luckily, I found people like yourself. But these days, there's so much, and that is great, right? Like people can learn a lot about how to learn about law enforcement, how to learn about testing, which is a lot of where people found me is trying to get their mind right for applying and hiring and really what the job entails. Uh, but the more stuff there is, you're right, the more noise there is, the more charlatans there are. And I mean, no one needs to take super long or a ton of energy to think about all these kind of McDojo type of self-defense gurus, and some of it is for sure parody, and others is like, no, it looks like parody, it looks like a joke, but people are paying really good money and spending a lot of time thinking this is going to protect them. Is there anything that just really jumps out, like grinds your gears when you see people in this space that you certainly take seriously because it can be life and death?
Yeah, I get really frustrated with that. There are some people out there that are insanely talented tactical athletes, but they're still teaching from the perspective of look at what I can do. And if you train like I do for 20, 30 years, you might be able to do what I can do. That's fine if we're pursuing an art, a martial art, the expression of technique, almost like a world-class ballerina, right? Um, and I remember. Do you remember the movie with Gregory Hines and Barishnikov called White Knights? It was a movie you weren't even born probably, but it was like a movie from 30, 40 years ago maybe. But they had Barishnikov, and now Barishnikov, if you look at a ballerina's body, like their physique, they're like sculpted. They're like Michelangelo, like they're just amazing musculature. So they have fight scenes in this movie, and it's Russia, Cold War. Barishnikov is affecting whatever. So they have these fight scenes, and I remember watching it and people saying to me, hey, did you see they had like Barishnikov like doing like Bill? You remember Bill Superfoot Wallace? Did you ever into him? As another generation. He was like a great
I'm looking up White Knight. Sorry.
He was legend. He was. I'm trying to think of who's your contemporary. But so Wallace was this famous like kickboxer, and he would knock people out with like hook kick, round kick. Like just like insane. They called him Superfoot. That was his nickname. So they had a choreographer doing that sort of stuff. I'll try to wrap this story up because like your audience is probably going, where are we? So, but they're showing like, because Barishnikov had such amazing kinesthetic perception, proprioception, his ability to control his body from being a world-class ballerina, he could do all of these kicks, and they choreographed it. And people would say to me, hey, did you see that? That was amazing. And I would know it was horrible. And they didn't understand. I said, listen, you could tell there was no expression of violence. There was no connection to understanding violence. It was posing moves. It was, as we like to say, choreography.
Sure, yeah.
So you asked me what grinds my gears, and I'm off all over the place. So reel me in or make notes of all the different stories. There was a video that went viral on the internet of I think it was from South Africa. And it was a machete attacking a soldier, an MP. And the guy did a gorgeous judo throw. As the guy came in, he stepped in, he threw him on the ground, knee ride, strips it. It went online. There was chaos in the streets, and this guy, like scratching the machete across the pavement and then going, come on, man. And he comes like at the guy, and beautiful judo throw. And the internet went nuts. This is why you train was the message. And I'm not going to mention the names because the biggest names reposted that video saying, this is why you train. I posted it right away and said, this is fake. This is choreography. And what stuns me is how subject matter experts can't tell.
Oh, I see.
if I'd known we're going to talk about it, I've actually, if you want to get fancy with your editing, it's posted. I've got it posted, the video, because 2 days later or 3 days later, because it got really viral, another angle of the attack came out, and it was a police demo, and you could see people watching, and then cameraman walking like this. But Eric, here's the thing: all of these experts who train cops, who train civilians and citizens, all thought it was real. Now, I'm not saying I'm clairvoyant. I've just studied violence, fear, and aggression, and I broke down fighting in a way that at first broke my heart in the 80s, because I wanted to believe in all the kung fu and martial art. I love that shit.
Yeah.
I grew up on. I wanted to be a famous martial artist like Bruce Lee. I was so inspired, and the more I studied, and I can remember it was about a year and a half, 2 year period in the mid 80s when I started experimenting with the startle flinch. I couldn't understand why, when I started surgically looking at the way people get suckered in a confrontation, not just the sucker punch, but just behaviorally manipulated.
Right.
And it's, how does a cop get punched in the face inside the reactionary gap? How is that even fucking possible? You walked in, if you're at an ATM or a Starbucks and someone walks up and hits you, you get it. You're out. You're doing this. I'm on my phone. But if you're a cop closing the gap, watching this suspect, and they still hit you, there's something wrong with the training. There's something you are not being told.
Right.
And that fascinated me. And so the connection in the 80s, this is how long, and I know we joked before we started recording about my tangents and going down rabbit holes.
No, I love it.
I've been talking about startle flinch conversion since the mid 80s.
Yeah.
And I remember getting a message from Bill Lewinsky, right, from Force Science.
Yeah.
Maybe about 6 months ago, saying, "Hey, we just did a study that supports your startle flinch stuff for like the startle flinch and drawing and shooting." My thought, and Bill, if you listen to this, give me a call, because we never spoke, even though we went back and forth and missed each other. My first thought was, this is what I've been telling people for 30 years. And I've trained tier 1 military, SWAT, all over the world. And the people who had an open mind to go, holy shit, if violence loves speed, then maybe I should be looking at something that's faster than thinking. What's faster than thinking is your startle response.
Yeah, reflex,
like
right?
You've flinched hundreds of times in your life on duty, but also walking into a spider web, putting out the garbage, and an animal moves in the bushes, and you're like, fucking you. And everyone listening to this, you've all flinched hundreds of times, if not thousands of times in your life, but never once when you flinch did you ever say, I should flinch. It's non-conscious. And let's connect this to street survival and reactionary gap. You only flinch when your situational awareness has been compromised. Situational awareness is a conscious skill. It's a competency. If I say, Eric, don't let me distract you, we're in the reactionary gap, you're watching my hands, you're watching my eyes, and I go, but what about that guy there? And you go, which guy? And I hit you.
Yeah.
And that's a cartoony example, of course, but situational awareness, head on a swivel, left to bang, all the concepts are legit. But if you look down at your watch for a second to see when your shift is over, you're compromised. If you're, and so, I'm all over the place, and I want to kind of reel this in here, because what grinds my gears is people who still, and we just had this yesterday, a guy poking at my reference to Hicks law, saying like, oh, that was a study in a lab for reaction time for decision making. It's got nothing to do with like force on force. I'm like, what are you talking about?
It's all related, right?
But the essence of it was just very simple. And the way I break it down is that, like, the Hicks law basically says, for layperson, for Ernie and Bert in Sesame Street, explain it to me super simple. If you've got more choices to make, your reaction time is longer. And so we always say the SPEAR system is Hicks law compliant, because when I'm in our de-escalation nonviolent posture, and I'm trying to morally, ethically, legally diffuse this or communicate or gather intel, and you suddenly go, well, when you come at me, there will be a flinch. If we had a system that converted the flinch, the non-conscious response, into a protective countermeasure, you would be safer. It's the same thing as a biological airbag. And we would deploy that, And that would stop a headbutt, a gun grab, and a sucker punch and a tackle. The 4 classic attacks inside the reactionary gap are all stymied or jammed by this biological airbag, only if you know how to do it properly. So I've been saying literally for 1993 was the first time I taught at a police conference, the American Society of Law Enforcement Trainers conference in Dallas, Texas. And I told everyone there's no such thing as a reactionary gap, and that's what gets you in a lot of trouble. The reactionary gap, when you think about the term reactionary gap, there's an assumption, a non-conscious assumption that this is the space between me and the threat, and I will have time to react. Well, the Tueller principle and the Dennis Tueller 21-foot, the knife versus gun, which is very often misunderstood. And I broke that down decades ago for people that if you need 21 feet to identify a knife, go, holy shit, draw your weapon, get offline and engage the guy. You need 21 feet. That's what they decided, measuring it over and over again. Who said that, 5 to 6 feet was safe? If I can stab you at 21 feet, what distance do I need to just punch you and knock you out and then take your gun? 21 feet less the length of the knife, right? And then I would throw this and maybe my brain's just moving too fast. I go, you would alert, like a dog alert, and you would alert if you saw a guy brandishing a knife. So your nervous system would go, fuck, knife, and you would start to move. But if I started coming at you from 21 feet and I was nude and I had no weapons, your brain wouldn't alert. You'd go, what the hell's wrong with this guy?
Right.
Sir, are you okay, sir? In other words, because there's no physical weapon present, your reaction time is even slower because of the way we train.
Yeah. So before we keep going, I kind of want to hit on a few things and expand on a few things. So one is that you kind of gave the example, and this ties back to what you just said, but at the beginning, which was, how is a cop getting sucker punched with training? Like we have an issue here. And you gave the example of an ATM, and I almost want to interrupt you, but I'll do it now, which is that people today, like an adult that watches the news sometimes and is aware of the world, should recognize, no, you should be ready for an attack at an ATM, because that stuff happens. You are extremely vulnerable. And so if your head's not on a swivel for civilians, just looking around and being aware of your periphery and continuing to peek at the shadows and all these things, you need to be doing that, right? And that goes into the next thing, which is the flinch response, right? The startle response, which is that's biological, right? There's that rudeness, and you hit on a couple examples there where even when there's nothing there, when you see a shadow, you think it's a snake, and we don't live in Australia, so we don't think that there isn't commonly going to be like every deadly animal just jumping out at us all the time, like it is down under supposedly. But we do flinch. We do have that visceral reaction of like, oh my gosh, I almost thought I stepped on something, but it was the garden hose. Like, why is that? And so what I also hear, and kind of bridging this, is that you've been recognizing of this for decades, and then you're training into part of the response. And then for those that aren't watching and can't see, a very, I think, iconic piece of the spear method, or a lot of your training, is to basically bring your hands up, right? So you kind of have your forearms in front of you. It is that some people learn it as like the dive response.
Can I inject something there?
Yeah.
And this is semantics. You're right on the spot, but your survival system takes care of it all. Like there's nothing for you to do. And you're right. People listening to this can't see that when I was, gesturing to flinch, my hands would come up, fingers splay. I would cover my head. I'd push away the danger. excuse me. But we don't train people to flinch. We train people how to weaponize the flinch, how to convert it into a protective countermeasure.
Yeah.
And so when anybody flinches, including a little baby, there's a test when a newborn is out on the table, they do a test called the Moro test, and they want to see the baby flinch, right? And make sure the reflexes are there. So this is hardwired DNA level, loud noise, sudden fright. And it's my favorite subject in which is also one that type A personality shy away from, is talking about fear, right? So the type A personality doesn't want to talk about fear, but fear isn't the enemy. Fear is just energy. And if you understood how to use it as energy, to consume it almost like a fossil fuel, you can use it to power things, just recognizing that we can't be brave if we're not afraid. The primary ingredient of courage is fear. And that's a whole other conversation. But back to where you were talking about the flinch, and this is the actual neurobiological sequence. A stimulus gets introduced too quickly, the eyes close, the head turns, the shoulders come up. Nobody can see me, you can see me. So the first thing that happens at a speed that only medical equipment, medical grade equipment can measure, the eyes close, the head turns, the shoulders come up. Then at lightning speed, the hands come up to protect the head. Somehow how many times have you in your years as a police officer, you come on a scene where somebody's getting beaten up and they're on the ground. What if they're conscious? What position are they in on the ground? They're covering in a
yeah,
fetal
it's
position.
fetal position, right? You're protecting the head,
But
and
their
you're curled
hands
up.
are always trying to cover the head, correct?
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah. Car accident, when somebody goes through a windshield before seatbelts were mandatory or they weren't wearing a seatbelt, where's there always trauma? Hands and forearms,
yeah, forearms.
not just the head. Motorcycle accident, arms, hands, and forearms. Knife fight, hands and forearms. Gunfight, hands and forearms. Think about this. So I literally, since the 80s, man, been telling people I got good news and I got bad news about the startle flinch and injecting it and putting it in as part of your defensive tactics protocol. The good news is it's faster than a speeding bullet. And then I would show a picture. I got this picture in our SPEAR, our law enforcement defensive tactics course. It's a dead guy sitting in a chair and he's got a bullet in his face and he's lying there. You can't see it, like this, dead in the chair. And you could see 2 bullet holes in his arm. And I say, quickly, how many holes are there? Everyone goes 3. I go, how many times was he shot? And if you're rushing, you go 3. I go, no, that's 1 bullet. Someone shot this guy and he went, right? And it went through his forearm, out the forearm, into his head. I go, so the good news is that startle flinch is faster than a speeding bullet. Not really, but metaphorically. The bad news is it doesn't stop the bullet. And everyone would morbidly laugh, right? But the hands come up, Eric, to protect the head. So we observed that in the 80s. And then what we did is we created almost like Pavlov's dog, Pavlovian classical conditioning, where we created a whole bunch of really cool, I'll call them proprietary drills after this many years, of ways to synthetically create a startle response in training and then convert it so you go from primal to tactical in training. What we're training is the conversion. I get a lot of people ask me, really smart people ask me, they go, yeah, it's funny bumping into you. I was going to ask you, why are you teaching people to flinch? Why do you want someone to flinch? And I like scratch my head. I'm like, where the fucking, do you read anything or listen to anything I say? I'm not teaching anyone to flinch. You already flinch. I'm teaching you how to convert the flinch because you won't flinch unless your situational awareness is compromised when it comes to managing violence.
Yeah.
So sorry for the rant and the hijack.
No.
I just wanted to say that we're not putting our hands there. We find our hands there and then we go, oh, in fact, I make this joke that if you really understand how to turn your flinch into a protective countermeasure, and you're standing and you're talking to someone, you're going, look, I don't understand. You said this and then this, but this doesn't look like you in your ID. So you were standing, and then the guy goes and he grabs your gun or he jumps at you. Your nervous system is going to do something like this, right? It's going to micro flinch. If you had training that said deploy biological airbag now, like Schwarzenegger's Terminator screen, friend, foe, proximity, airbag deployed. And I use the airbag metaphor over and over again. So because there's so many people in the defensive tactics world and law enforcement martial arts that go, why do you want to flinch? That's bullshit. Don't do that. Do this. And they confuse technical with tactical. And this comes full circle to, you said what grinds your gears is people who are really talented, who have the captive audience, but aren't looking at neurobiology, kinesiology, and psychology. What they're doing is they're saying, attack me like this, here's a demo, and everything works in a demo. The litmus test for all of this is body cam and CCTV.
Yep.
If all of the other stuff worked, we would see on every body cam, every CCTV, and every smartphone video of every fight, agency-approved tactics being used effectively all the time. And that is not the case, not even close.
Yeah. Yeah. And so I appreciate you walking through, because that's super helpful to recognize like this is something that's happening. And that's where we do have the standard interview stance, right? When you're taught to have your notebook out and hopefully it's up closer to your chest, like covering your chest, right? When you're writing it like this with your pen in front of you, so that when the danger presents, you have your hands up already, right? So the common thing that we trained was like hands in pockets, bad, bad, bad. Don't do that. Don't have your hands occupied with all this BS, especially your weapon side. But then now the new thing with external carriers is people my pet peeve is people sticking their hands in their vest on their chest.
Right.
I understand holding it on top, and there's been different studies where people analyze that, but to shove them way deep in there like hand warmers is something I'm generally not a fan of.
If you get to train with us and you're invited as my guest to come to any one of our courses, if you can get to it and experience
Sweet.
it.
Thank you.
There's so much more, man. Like my brain is just firing. Like I want to do a seminar right now on your call. There's a part of your survival system, all part of neuroanatomy. And that's the other thing is like people go, oh, but Blauer wasn't a cop. And Blauer, I go, dude, this is fucking neuroscience. Do the research. And I share the research. You can do it. If you're holding anything and you get attacked and you flinch, when you flinch, your body contracts. So
Right.
everything you're touching gets grabbed. Like when you see videos of cops getting dragged by cars, and then the comment is, hey, guys, let go of the car. No kidding. Duh.
Mhm.
Right. You don't have a choice at the moment. If you happen to be like holding on a car, like using it to leverage to pull the guy out and he shakes you off and hits the gas, if your body flinches while you're holding it, it's going to contract on the beam of the car, on the door. If you're holding your plate carrier like this, because the conversation is going so long and your shoulders are tired, and the guy goes to sucker punch you, the fact that your hands are close to your face doesn't mean you're going to do shit. In fact, what it's going to do is lock down. This is neuroscience. It's why if you go to, see if I have a wire here to show you. I don't. Here's one. I haven't done this, but if this was an electrician's school, they tell you always use the back of your hand if you're moving near what might be a live wire.
Mm-hmm.
Because the cross extensor chain, if you do this way and you hit it and it goes, and it flinches, it won't let go and you'll electrocute yourself, right? So this is just about, like if you're holding something in your hand, we show videos of this and all that. So, but the problem isn't where should I put my hands? The problem is we're not teaching police officers and the general public about energetic pre-contact cues. What the fuck is energetic pre-contact cues? Let me ask you this. You've been a cop for how many years?
Oh, almost 18.
Okay. You ever been in a chase?
Yeah.
Foot chase?
Yeah.
Yeah. You ever been in a fight?
Yep.
Yeah. Right. Think back. No rush answer here. You're talking to somebody. Did you know before somebody took off that they were going to run?
Times, and then hindsight's 2020. Was I picking up the cues? Is your point, right?
Well, so when I ask that question, most cops know when somebody's going to resist. There's something about their energy.
Yeah.
You don't know what they're going to do. Are they going to run? Are they going to swing? Are they going to flail and push back? Or like, you pull up on a guy, he's driving drunk, he's in his car. If you understand energetic pre-contact cues, that can influence or inspire your de-escalation or your strategy. If you go straight automaton, license and registration, please, and you're not looking at how this guy's holding the steering wheel or the tension in his jaw, you can just pick up stuff. If I'm standing here in front of you like this, and all of a sudden we're talking and I stand up and my chest comes up and you see my breathing changing and then I blade a little bit. We show videos of guys that go, how did you not know you weren't going to be sucker punched? You can see this starting 30 seconds early.
So I think that's the key is, right? Like, I think going along with... Yeah, tell me what you think here is most people, like you stood up, your stool kind of scooted back, your chest was puffed up and you bladed a little bit. Most people will feel uncomfortable. Trained or untrained, they're going to feel uncomfortable if you ask them, if you freeze, you're like, hey, how did that make you feel? And you're like, I don't like it. Okay, why is that? And then if you peel it back, trained or untrained, I think most people would be like, man, I don't know if he's going to fight me or what. Cool. That's the thing. That's the thing we need to pay attention to. Is that kind of what you're getting at? Like when a cop gets sucker punched, they're ignoring that?
Well, it's not that they're ignoring it. They know it, but they're dogmatic about the next step because of how the training was done. It all comes back to training. If I said to you, so we've broken down things, we call it the timeline of violence, and we break it down to situational awareness phase. That's pre-fight, things you're thinking, things you're seeing. Then there's in-fight. Now you're inside the reactionary gap and things haven't kicked off yet, but you're de-escalating. You still need to have an internal, external system there. And there isn't one taught in law enforcement. It's just say this, move to 2:00, you're under arrest, secure the wrist. It's too automaton. It's not brain based, it's block based. It's step 1, step 2, step 3. And so when I interview, and I've interviewed tons of people that have been in ambushes, military and law enforcement, and they all go, and this happened. And I go, what happened before that? They go, what do you mean? And I would get them, it takes me 5 minutes or so. And what I'm getting them to say is what happened before what happened before what happened before the ambush. So they start to go, oh, fuck, I did feel that there. But because if I told you, if you got a bad feeling about somebody, these are the things you're going to deploy and download immediately in your brain. Nonviolent posture changes, Trojan horse, starts to deploy Trojan horse strategy. These are things in our system. Start thinking about the 3 I's: instincts, intuition, intelligence. We have a choice speech program on, how to create a conversation with somebody while you're still, positioning yourself and trying to gather intel. So what you can do, if we know violence loves speed, the suddenness of the attack, and we know that if somebody truly surprises us, our executive function is going to be hijacked and our cognitive brain is bypassed. And this is what we've observed and pointed out. So there's a whole bunch of like little mini modules that we teach in what we call in our system the pre-fight, right? Where most of the training, it's like, okay, guys, defensive tactics training, let's go. And then it's like, okay, badge grab, gun grab. You think about this. You learned, weapon retention. Where do 99% of those drills start when you're doing weapon retention training?
Standing.
Standing. But what is your role player? What's your role player doing right away? Grabbing your gun.
They're going right to it.
Right. It's starting in most places. Role players on the gun, so you practice pinning the hand. Correct.
Mm-hmm.
So what you're practicing there is letting somebody grab your gun. That's part you don't realize you're doing it. When you learned how to get out of a headlock, where did that drill start?
With you allowing someone to do that, right?
Right. You bending over and putting a headlock on. Now, that's part of the training, but that's what most of the training is. And so at a neurological level, what we're doing in terms of reps, I do my 10,000 reps of the weapon retention drill, but I've always done one extra rep or the exact number of reps letting somebody grab my gun. In our system, we need to know how to stop the gun from coming out of the holster. But how did the guy get there? Like, am I blindfolded and next thing you know, he's on my gun? Like, what about all of the the energetic target glance at the gun, moving to the gun, reaching for the gun? And so if I had a whiteboard, we do this like 2 stick men, suspect, police officer, the X, and then we take it, we go D1, D2, D3, detect, defuse, defend. Most of your training is on the defend side. So you're practicing the physical over and over and over again, but it's starting with block-based training instead of brain-based training. The brain-based training starts during the D1, D2 phase. And so that's really where some of the most important work that we do, in the system. We're down a crazy rabbit hole here. So
yeah, no, those are good points, right? Because when we talk about training and being relevant, is it reality based? Is it these segments? Like, are we integrating it appropriately? And where my head even went to is like training hypervigilance or training awareness, situational awareness, and this is a common conversation across the nation, or probably Canada as well. But like academies are going away from the paramilitary kind of vibe, the really strict kind of circumstance and situations. But one of the things in looking at that, the academy I came up in and many people came up in was you had to brace in the hallways. You had to post a guard at all times when there's no instructors in the classroom, so that someone would have to be aware, right? You'd have to look over your uniform for every little speck of something. So you are training this attention to detail and this situational awareness. If an instructor comes down the hallway, everyone put your stuff down, get your desk squared away, and be ready to pop to attention. Do you think there's value in that type of thing because we are training this or trying to condition maybe this awareness? Or what are ways that police departments or academies could look at it, if not that, or the example that you gave?
Yeah, I think a lot of that is carryover from the military, where you were taking young people who you needed to, I don't want to use the word brainwash them, but condition them to the point, because it could cost them or the person beside them life if you didn't, like an immediate action response.
Mm-hmm.
So I think a lot of that is just a throwback carryover from taking an 18-year-old kid, and saying, man, we got to turn this person into a soldier, into a warrior. And, they didn't have video games back in World War I or whatever, but the equivalent of that, of this person didn't want to do shit, and it's like, oh, you know, officer on deck, stand up, and like we wanted people immediately. If I said charge that hill now, you didn't go, come on now, really? I'm tired. Like you just went.
Yeah.
So is there value in that? Of course, in that type of discipline. Are there other ways to get there? Of course, for sure. So could you let that slide? Yeah, but the part of the erosion of civilization is this lack of respect for people in general, let alone authorities. Like it's just so obnoxious how police and public safety are treated now in the last 5 years. Like the stuff that's going on, it was just disgusting. So, and I know it's connected, but it's not connected. If you're talking about like, did that type of paramilitary training improve situational awareness and attention to detail? I would be hard pressed to agree with that. I think that was more about, like we've got 5 dogs here, and they're natural guard dogs, but they're not trained like a Malinois or something like that. So, we've got a dog, a Corso Great Dane mix.
Oh, yeah.
And she's, and she alerts on everything, but she's like, I'm here. Her name's Hazel. I'm like, Hazel, come here. And she'll just look at me and decide if she wants to come or not.
I got a dog.
I've got food. She'll come running over. But like, so she has no discipline. Do I wish she was like we had done the paramilitary, where I went and she came running over and right by my leg, and I turned and she sat? I love what I got friends that train military dogs and shit like that, and I'm in awe of that. So that's one thing, is like, I need, when it's time to fight, that switch has to be, you got to flip that switch and go. You can't go, oh man, another death match. Okay, here we go. Like you got to move. So I think that's more of that, if that makes sense. But the situational awareness stuff, I don't think there's a big connection to that.
Okay. No, I like this. I like this because as we've gone to the new age or new evolution of a lot of academies being more like a college setting, like a campus setting than what I came up in, that would be where I and a lot of people would go to, is like, well, we should keep this, or the benefit of keeping this is that. And so I think it's healthy to recognize, hey, if that is the goal, there are better ways to train it. I want to be mindful of time and leave a amount of time to talk about this, but so much of what you talked about and what you're about and what we've even talked about today is fear, and how we need to not be afraid of fear, which sounds kind of silly. But so much of what you put out is fear management. And I like how you quoted, I had a note and I was like, I wanted to see if I could attribute that quote to you, which you already said it, right? Which is that essentially bravery requires fear, or it's that element of fear within courage that a lot of people are aware of. And I'm reminded of a conversation I had on the podcast with Seb Lebois and Mark Bouchard, where we're talking about anticipating the worst case scenario. And if you anticipate things going absolutely sideways, you can be paralyzed, but rather allow the fear to govern some ideas and some options. And so that's what I want to kind of go to, is helping cops recognize that worst case scenario can be an asset if you're putting it through the right filters. And then when you say fear management, like, what do you mean by that? And how can people be encouraged to think about things so that they can identify viable options and work through the fear, as you mentioned, as like an energy source that you can metabolize it for a good purpose?
That's a very big question, and it's a great question. So I grew up afraid of everything. I was competitive. I wrestled. I grew up in Canada. I mentioned earlier, I think, but so I skied. You're either a skier or a hockey player. I was a skier. My family was a ski family. I competed at a high level, and I was always afraid. And my fear of fear kept me from enjoying what I was doing and possibly even hitting that proverbial flow state. And that plagued me. I carried it around like a shadow all the time. But I showed up. It wasn't like self-sabotage. I would go to the martial arts tournament to compete. I would go to class. I'd go to a wrestling tournament. But I'd be there. I could be up at bat, Eric. And instead of going, yeah, come on, maybe burn it in here, I'd be like, don't strike out, don't strike out. It was my self-talk. Because I couldn't shake the butterflies in my stomach. Why am I breathing like this? Why are my hands sweating? No one ever explained to me. What's that?
Where do you think that came from?
I don't know, just my curse, But what it turned into is a massive movement that has changed people's lives. So, I think if you look at, innovative entrepreneurial journeys, it was somebody's obsession with something.
Yeah.
I didn't understand, and I'm making it sound more dramatic, but I think there are things in your life where you're exactly the same as me, and other things you're not. Like I know, I remember sitting around with a full-time SWAT team, a Dallas SWAT team, training these guys, and I said to the guys, how many of you have been in a gunfight? Everyone in the room had been in gunfights. Okay, how many of you have fast roped into a fucking fight? Everyone, they had all done all this stuff. I said, how many of you can say I love you, I'm sorry to your wife, like right away? How many of you can apologize? And they looked at me like I was like, how many of you have great relationships with your kids and can talk, right? And so I could say, hey, put you here. Now your heart's pounding, you're sweating, and what is that? Is it something you learned as a kid? Is it something that, the way your parents were? And who knows? What I discovered empirically and through trial and error is that when you peel this onion of why, it comes down to a fearful thought.
Yep.
What if I lose? What if I fail? What if I miss? What if I, if I said, well, this guy's been testing for sergeant and he keeps failing his test, but I know the material. It's fear.
Yep.
You get in a gunfight and all your rounds hit the wall behind the suspect and you miss the guy and you unload, your complete mag. How do you miss? Because you qualified. How did you miss? Fear. Well, no, I wasn't afraid. I was in the fight. People don't understand that fear isn't that you weren't trained or willing to fight or engage. And this is where the type A personality has to kind of meditate a little bit, a little woosah moment, and contemplate the messaging here. We're talking about learning how any type of fear spike influences what we think or what we do. So we use a cool acronym, false expectations appearing real, meaning there's a movie in your mind. And the movie in your mind can hijack your immediate situational awareness, because the acronym is false expectations appearing real. It's when I'm visualizing something in the future, hasn't even happened yet, and it's influencing my tactics or my thinking in the present. And so that creates a longer refractory delay between stimulus response. And it can be, and it doesn't have to be like when people think of fear as like a real pejorative, big fancy word, a negative thing. If you pull your gun and you're getting ready to shoot, and then you see a school bus go behind the suspect, and you go, fuck, if this round misses or goes through this person, I might hit a kid, and you do something different. That was fear interfering in a positive way.
Yep.
But it can also hijack your thinking if So I wanted to first put out there that our program isn't about the startle, flinch, scary fear. It's understanding that it's fear that triggers the flinch, and flinch can save your life because it means your situational awareness was compromised. It's the fear spike that gets the hands up covering the head that locks and loads your close quarter arsenal and allows you to deploy that biological airbag so that you can get back in the fight. The fear that you're alluding to is our whole program, No Fear, which is about the psychology of fear and understanding how my relationship with fear changes everything I do. And I tell people, from how you talk to how you work out, if I said to you, hey, we're going to do deadlifts today, you automatically know what your PR is. You know what your max lift is. And if I say, hey, I think you're stronger, man, I'm looking at your body and your mechanics, I think you could lift more, your brain already says no. Like I'm 400 is my this, or 425 or 370 or whatever it is. Like fear creates our limits in our mind, right? And I'm getting a little metaphysical here, but it's recognizing that, and you alluded to it in the way we say it in the program, is you can't be brave if you're not afraid. The primary ingredient of courage is fear. If I had a bottle of courage, there'd only be one ingredient in there, and it would be fear. It'd be organic. And that's what I want people to realize, is that if you're in a confrontation, any type of confrontation, wife, business associate, suspect in the street, a confrontation, you look in the mirror and you go, what happened? How did I let my body go like this? I got to get back in shape, right? That's a confrontation. And you go like, man, I think I've let myself go too far. I'm too old to do that. Like, that's all fear. Yeah. So it's recognizing that a fear spike creates doubt. Doubt creates hesitation. That's natural. But if you don't recognize that you've started the fear loop, which is this movie in your mind right there, that hesitation can turn into procrastination. And then procrastination can turn into fixation. And now we're in there. Why did
Yeah.
you let yourself go? Why didn't you keep fighting? Why this? Why that? And if you peel the onion, I've learned over decades and talking to thousands of people that I've trained that it comes down to just saying I was afraid.
Mm-hmm.
And we use different language depending on how protective you are of your relationship with fear. There's a lot of people in the type A community, and I'm part of that, and you're part of that, that go, yeah, I was just worried about this, which is fear, right? I thought this, so I was concerned, and I didn't want to. That's like I go, what's one word that would describe that? A lot of you guys and gals don't like to use the word fear.
Yeah, man, I love this, and I'm soaking this in. I'm excited to listen back to it. A few things when you said, we have a lot in common. Absolutely, and that's me sharing and reflecting on. I recall being a very fearful kid. I was afraid of a lot of things, and I think that's a lot of why I became a cop. Right, like, hey, prove it, right? And so even this year, as I kind of share about my, turning 40 reflections, a lot of it has been, man, I don't want to live with fear. I don't want to have fear be such a predication in the things I'm doing. But this conversation is very helpful, and here's why. Because whether you identify as a type A or not, the fact is, and I don't identify as a type A, but I know that our industry and our career and our passion is we're hard chargers, and we are committed to the cause and what we're trying to do, and that service and protecting others and being our best, especially those that are listening and taking the time to have this type of deep dive. However, earlier this year, I was very intentional on some goals and some themes, which was, hey, release fear, let it go, don't be afraid. Whereas later in the year, we're talking in summertime, I'm like, man, why is fear still a thing? Like, you can't just will it away. And maybe my takeaway is we shouldn't. It's knowing what to do with it, because um, some of my proudest moments in my entire life, on the job and outside of the job, whether it was a hostage rescue I was a part of, where I was fairly confident I was going to get shot, fear, man, like I was saturated in fear, but that fear made me know how important the thing was and how dialed in I needed to be, how focused the team I was with needed to be. One of my proudest moments, right? I didn't get shot. It was fantastic in hindsight. But also one of the most fearful times in my life was getting down on one knee. Not because I didn't love my girlfriend that became my fiance that night, but I didn't want to mess it up. Like, I come from a divorced family, so does she. Like, so just to say, like, fear, like, it can be such a tool, such a resource, such a weapon, for good. And so I really appreciate that. I did not expect to get that kind of takeaway in our conversation today.
Dude, I just got wicked goosebumps
Hell yeah.
when you talked about proposing to your girlfriend that night, and like, why would you have so much fear? This is the magic of this, and where I would tell people fear is fuel, and there are things that you need to do in life while you're afraid. That's the point. It's when you let the fear redefine you, or you let the fear redirect you, that your life can change. I always wanted to do that, but fear said no. The concept, it's so profound, and I love that you went from hostage rescue to marriage proposal. In
Yeah,
the
she's not
same
gonna
breath.
love that if someone goes to the Reader's Digest, be like, hey, Eric compared this to that.
Right,
Pretty stark, right?
but no, but I'm a romantic, and I see it as your marriage like an important part of your life,
Yeah, it matters.
of living, and so what if fear, and this is for you and whoever's digging this, listening, what if fear wasn't a symbol, it was a signal? So if your symbol of fear is I must not be ready for this because I'm scared. Because our heroes never talk about fear. Only now, recently, whether it's Tyson or George St. Pierre, people talking about how scared they were when they fought. But when we saw them fighting back in the day, George St. Pierre with 4% body fat doing a Superman punch into, BJ Penn's head, like no one back then thought that he was dreading this day and that he was terrified and he wasn't sleeping or eating properly because of that, right? Because it was only after. So if fear was a signal instead of a symbol, there's a line I use when I'm doing my no fear lecture, where as a competitive skier, I would think, because everyone told me how good I was, but I never won races because I always skied so hard trying to win that I would catch a tip or miss a gate or wipe out. And they were always famous wipeouts. Oh, Blauer, you're going so fast. Too bad you wiped out, right? And so people looked at me as like a stud skier, and I was a really good skier, but nobody ever asked the question, like, why don't you ever finish races? Like, I wiped out all the time. And it was like, oh, that was so close. But if somebody asked me, I'd go like, because I was out of control here. What I was thinking, Eric, was if I'm so good, why am I so scared? Because no one ever told me, and cops don't even get told this. Hey, I've had cops who've never been told about auditory exclusion, tunnel vision, tachypsyche. You need to be in survival learning research. You need to be told, hey, these are things that could happen to you in a fight, right? Everything goes into slow motion. You can't hear anything but your breathing or your heartbeat, or I've had guys say I was a gunfight. I could not hear my rounds going on. Yeah. I could just hear my breathing, and they're saying it to me like they were surprised. I go, that's called auditory exclusion, and slow motion is tachypsyche, and I can't believe that you weren't educated on this before.
Yeah.
You can't will it, but if it's there and you've got a data point from training, you go, oh, that's this. That doesn't make you go, fuck, is my gun working? Like for a second, like, because you can't hear the rounds going.
Sure. Yeah. Can I
it's
cut in? Because,
conversation.
Yeah. And I hope everyone's learning that now. It's upsetting if they're not, because if nothing else, like in my officer involved shooting, I had definite tunnel vision, auditory exclusion, and the chronology was really difficult to pin down to this day. I can't say exactly the order of events or the timeline outside of someone telling me, because I didn't have a body cam, like outside of someone on the perimeter saying, oh, the series of gunshots was like, a second and a half. I would have told you it was 30 seconds. If I hadn't learned that beforehand and had someone to bounce that off of, I would have thought I'd messed up. I'm not cut out for this thing. And I would have hung it up, 15 years ago or whatever it was, right? Like 12 years ago. But the point is, that's super critical. And even, you brought up Dr. Bill Lewinsky and Force Science. This was a new one for me. I just going through the certification relatively recently, which is we know about tunnel vision, or most of us do. However, when they did the study, are you familiar with the study where they tracked the eye movement of experienced versus novice officers on a scenario? And the novice officers are looking freaking everywhere. They're looking at the car, this and that. But the experienced officers focus in on the potential threat, and so their eyes are moving very little. And so it makes sense when you look at a after action debrief of a scenario where the seasoned officer, they execute really well, but they can't tell you about what that witness said and where that person was standing off to the side, because it didn't matter to them because of their training. And so I just kind of want to throw that out because it was front of mind. I feel like it's helpful for cops to know that, so that when they're in a situation that's critical, they don't beat themselves up because they weren't aware of what was going on around. That wasn't really part of the thing they should have been paying attention to.
Yeah. I mean, there's so much to it, and you guys are undervalued and underpaid and completely misunderstood by most of the public. I just wish, if I had a magic wand, that you as a community had more brain-based Socratic training that integrated the central nervous system. I remember operator from a military unit that I trained. I was down training these guys on the actual 9/11, and right after that, he deployed. I didn't see them for 2 years. They came back. I went back down. And the guy looks at me, he said, when he gets into training, he's going to do everything he can to make sure that the central nervous system of their combatives program is based on the central nervous system. And I looked at him, I said, like, duh. Like there's two types of fights, right? There's a shootout and a gunfight. I call it, the gunfight is when the suspect starts it. The shootout is when you have a perimeter and you go, drop your gun, right? And it's not just a joke. There's a psychology to that. And then there's two types of confrontations. One is when you're protecting yourself because you were attacked, and one is when you were initiating. And so you're inside the reactionary gap. And one of the slides in our program, we talk about, all fights are dangerous, but the most dangerous fight is the ambush. And if we want to make cops safer, we need to give them counter ambush education. And that's not just, and a lot of people go, oh, we do that. Watch, attack me like this. It's not the Jim Carrey Living Color skit, if you ever saw that. You're
Yeah,
attacking me long.
I have seen that.
Most
Yes.
people have, right? It's understanding neurobiology, kinesiology, psychology. It's understanding a fear. Another very powerful line from our program is the people who manage their fear manage to fight. That doesn't guarantee victory, but it guarantees that you're in the fight. A fear spike that is mismanaged changes your reaction time. If violence loves speed, the most important thing we can work on in training is mind speed. Not how fast we draw, because the mind navigates the body. Not how fast we punch or block or parry, because the mind navigates the body. If we slow down the mind, we slow down the body. And that's a missing component, and has been kind of the basis of part of my life's work, and is still frustratingly misunderstood, where people are still working on techniques instead of tactical thinking.
Yeah. Well, I love the dive on themes, the critical mindset that, it explicitly said a few times, but I think, and I hope that the listeners recognize that as a prevailing connection piece, is like the mind in all of this. But then also, I love the nod to Socrates, and looking at things critically. I would love to pick your brain more and dive into just philosophical things as well, but I want to be respectful of your time. Is there anything that you'd like to leave the listeners with as we wrap?
I think we covered a lot of stuff. I would invite you all to do some research on our material. Your agency will probably not pay for stuff, and 30% of the officers who come to our training self-fund because somebody says, no, we don't have the budget, or we're doing this system or that system. But we do have a free program for active duty cops. It's online. And if you think you can't learn online, it's because whoever was trying to teach you sucked. You will learn a lot on that. So I'll send that to you, Eric. Please share that.
Nice. We'll do.
With the link with your audience. But it'll get you an exposure. It's several hours of stuff that I did during the Peaceful Summer of Love, during the Defund the Cops. I filmed 4 classes where I said, you need to understand this stuff. So it's dated because I have no filter. So I say some things that might reference things going on at that time. But the training is there. And I promise you this, it'll make you safer. Again, there's no charge to that. It's just a gift. Like, go do it. It'll make you safer. All of you, if you think about this metaphor, is like your body is like in this. It's one of my favorite metaphors. Your body's your car. Your situational awareness. I'll step here. I'll move here. Your angles. Your 2 o'clock. That's your nav system. And the fuel in the car is fear. You should not be hopping out of your car and running into a building for a domestic, for a barricaded subject, for trying to do something to serve and protect without adrenaline and fear. And the idea that you should ever be in a violent encounter and have no fear is a ridiculous concept to me. What we want to have is managed fear, not mismanaged fear. And I invite you all to explore that. And the impact of studying it will change how you show up as a father, as a mother, as a husband, as a wife, as a friend, because fear throttles everything we do in some way. So, I just and also thank you all for your service. You're not thanked enough. I said it earlier. It's been a huge privilege for me to work with law enforcement for decades.
Oh, well, thank you, Tony. Thank you for not just the access to the curriculum and paying it forward and being contributory towards public safety, but also just, making people safer. Like, as I said earlier, it's not just uniforms, but there's a lot of people that have certainly learned to be safer just as civilians and just people trying to navigate this human world. But thank you so much for your time and continuing in that 40 plus years of tutelage and teaching and mentoring. I very much appreciate it. I'm very excited to share this with so many other people.
Thank you, buddy. Stay safe, and happy to do a part 2 if you can come up with some more questions. I enjoyed talking to you.
I love it. Yeah, we'll do the metaphysical as you kind of you tickled that little piece too.
It'll just be you and me. Everyone else will go to sleep and like, what are these guys doing?
No, there's some big brains that listen in on this for sure. So thanks again, Tony.
Seb will listen. Seb will listen.
Yeah. I appreciate
Right.
that you know Seb.
Yeah, of course. Okay, man, be safe. I appreciate it. And thank you for everything you do.
Thank you. Thank you for tuning into another episode of Blue Grit Radio. As always, support this community by subscribing, giving us a 5-star review, and following, liking, and sharing posts on Blue Grit Wellness on Instagram. You can reach me there or email me at bluegritwellness@gmail.com. Be well and stay gritty.